Stonewall, a bar in New York City, and for members of the LGBT community, a rallying cry, one word that exemplifies the fight for equality. Orlando, one word that now exemplifies a huge pain, a very open wound in the heart of that community. Was it an act of terrorism? Was it the act of a closeted gay Muslim man? Was it an attack on the gay and lesbian community? Was it an attack on the Latino community? Is it an example of archaic gun laws? Is it all of the above? We asked that question tonight of our next guest, Cesar Zepeda, co-founder of Richmond Rainbow Pride. Cesar, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you live and work in Richmond, California. And I have always known that Richmond, California prides itself on being one of the more diverse communities, certainly in the country, but certainly in the Bay Area. Talk to me a little bit about how that community, Richmond as a whole, has been reacting over the last few weeks since Orlando. And then tell me, as a Latino gay man, when you first heard about Orlando and how it has impacted you.
So the community as a whole has been very open and warm. When I posted on Sunday morning when I woke up, I believe I was one of the first people to post something up on Facebook and on my media, social media, and people immediately came out and started emailing or contacting me saying, I'm sorry for this happening. And even though I was not, as far as I know, related to anyone that got injured or was murdered, it was still a family. It was still a connection. People reacted positively and knew that it hit home. Being the co-founder of the first LGBT organization in Richmond, they knew that it had a connection. Because in Richmond, while we're very diverse, it wasn't until 2014 that we created the first organization. And they know that we're trying to do these great strides forward. And anything that happens anywhere in the world, particularly in our country, can negatively affect our community.
Now, Richmond Rainbow Pride is now in its second year. You just celebrated your second Pride Parade, your second Pride event in Richmond, California, which for those of us who may be watching this from outside of Northern California is just about a 45-minute drive from San Francisco. You can see San Francisco from the Richmond waterfront. Incredibly diverse community, huge Latino community, huge African-American community, and a few years ago it got its first openly gay member of council, a lesbian woman, Jovanka Beckles. Talk to me about what that means to Richmond and how that has led to you founding Richmond Rainbow Pride and, you know, what the impact of Orlando is on that diversity.
Well, I think Jovanka has laid out the groundwork for others like myself running for city council. She's made it a little bit easier, and she's brought another layer of diversity that even though we've had it in Richmond, it wasn't apparent until she came out and said, hey, look at me, a black, Latina, lesbian, and in power. And she came out and she was out there, first by herself, it almost seemed, because the community wasn't that active. And she's been out there now again. This community that wasn't always apparent, now it's at the forefront.
Right, so what you're saying is that there was always a lively gay community in Richmond.
I don't know if lively, but there was always a gay community, but everybody's in the closet.
And is that because of a sense of fear? I mean, you know, we're talking about Orlando where people were actually killed, but Jovanka Beckles, when she was elected to city council, she was threatened.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
So again, everybody's in the closet. Everybody is gay inside of their home, but not gay outside of their home because of that fear. I mean, I came out when I was 20 and I got kicked out. I lived in Richmond.
You got kicked out of your home?
I got kicked out of my home. And I didn't feel safe in that community because of the stigma that was happening. So for her to be able to be out and proud had a whole different layer. Now you fast forward to the 2014 election where there was this black cloud of homophobia that came about. And that really drove it home because we're only 45 minutes away from San Francisco. And San Francisco being one of the gay meccas in the world, how is this happening in Richmond? Mm-hmm. Right? You couldn't really comprehend it. And then we didn't really have a place for the community to go to. So that's how Richmond Rainbow Pride got created. We needed a place to call home. We needed an organization, and that's how the first LGBT organization came about.
So the first Richmond Rainbow Pride celebration was in 2015. What was that like, and how was that different from this year?
So it started with the concept of a picnic. I bring a friend, you bring a friend, there'll be 20 of us, and it'll be very small. And then all of a sudden they said, well, what about if we have entertainment? Oh, well, now we have entertainment, now we need a stage. Well, we're going to have a stage, we're going to need some food, and now we're going to need some water, and we should invite more people.
So it was very organic. This wasn't the huge corporate-sponsored event that Pride has become in some major American cities.
No, this is a small park place, and we're just there celebrating our community.
And of course, this year, Richmond Rainbow Pride happened a week before the massacre in Orlando. You know, when you walk the streets of San Francisco's Castro District, you see a continually growing memorial at 18th and Castro. Have you seen any outward sides of grief or unity or community kind of bonding in Richmond? You know, is there a place where people have brought flowers and you see a presence of LGBT grief in Richmond?
Not that I know of a place that people have brought flowers, but there is unity. You know, within my board and within the organization, and Facebook is the place that most people are more prone to post things. You can see that people are more open to talk about it, and they're checking in, and they're finishing their emails with hugs or love, and before you say, thanks, see you tomorrow. Now it's making sure that you are okay. That's how they open every email that I've seen so far, is how are you doing? And thanks for being there. If you need anything, let me know.
You know, we spoke at the beginning of this interview about, you know, I call it the many tentacles of this story. My husband Alfredo said to me when we woke up early on Sunday morning and saw the news from Orlando, he said, this story has everything. It's a Muslim man, it's a gay nightclub, it's a semi-automatic weapon, it's a Latino club, there are also straight people there, and it's next to Disneyland. He says, how long do you think this story is? Oh, and by the way, it's the worst single mass shooting in United States history. There have been so many ways to enter this story, and I have to admit, not since September 11th have I read every single thing, and have almost, I think, gone through the stages of grief, denial, anger, acceptance. As a gay Latino, how has this hit you? Has it hit you as a gay man? Has it hit you as a community leader? Has it hit you specifically as someone who represents a community of color? I mean, how do you sort out all the feelings you've had to deal with these last few weeks?
All of the above. Once I posted this up on Facebook in the morning, I was getting ready for softball. And I remember being in the outfield, and my mind is just somewhere else. I wrote an email to my board explaining to them what happened and what was going on, and that I needed that support. And it was great that we as an organization were giving each other that. And also, one thing that happened while I was out playing softball, I was tagged on a Facebook post from someone that lives in San Francisco. And they said, Cesar, this is one of yours in Richmond. And I read the post. And it was a gentleman who lives in Richmond, a Latino man, who shared the CNN article about the massacre, saying, we need one of these in San Francisco to clean house.
Meaning we need a massacre of gay people in San Francisco.
Yes.
And they had tagged you.
Well, my friend tagged me after this. Somebody took a screenshot of this man's Facebook page. And my friend tagged me on that screenshot. I then forwarded over to all the social media pages in Richmond. In the community, there was not one community member on there that said, I agree. Yeah. They were all disgusted.
So do you feel that there is, you know, I mean, my husband is from Spain, but he was born in Venezuela, South American country. Just today, there was a story about the father of one of the victims who was shot and killed in Orlando, not claiming his son's body because he was ashamed of his son being gay. And this was a son and a father from Puerto Rico. And the article went on to say that as much as we may think that we have, you know, marriage equality and things are great, there's still a lot of homophobia and self-loathing within the Latino culture in South, Central America, and the Caribbean. Do you think that's true, and have you experienced it in Richmond?
Yes. Father's Day occurred a week after, and my dad gave me a hug a little bit tighter. I got kicked out when I was 20. Did not speak to him for 4 years. I don't think he realized the hate that is out there in the world, that by him kicking me out, he stopped protecting me. And my whole family was in shock when I was kicked out. How did my father do that to me? I was a baby. Everything I wanted, I got. Anything I even thought about, he went after and got it for me. I was a baby for everything. How did this happen? How did he kick somebody out without realizing that that was a piece of him? Father's Day happening a week after, I think that hit home. And saying, if I would still not have Cesar with me, how would my life be impacted? Mm-hmm. My brothers are always checking in with me. So I lost my whole family. My brothers would check in with me and say, how are you doing? Right? That wasn't happening before. So I think it's changed the conversation. And when I read the story about that father not claiming, I feel bad for him.
You feel bad for the father?
For the father. Because he doesn't realize what he's lost. And not just a son, but he's lost himself.
How do you think your father feels after Orlando? Do you think this is personal for him? Do you think that he sees it as an attack on the community in which his son lives?
Yes. You know, I believe that he's seeing the role that I play now. So his fear when I was first coming out was, I'm going to be a joke. People are going to laugh at me. Right? Because that's what the gay community is in the minds of people that are not open-minded yet. And that was his worst fear. And I believe that this father who's not claiming his son, I believe that's his fear as well. Right? He's thinking, if I claim him, people are going to make fun of me. Right? If I claim him, people are going to say I was a bad father. So right now it's all about him. I think it's going to take some time to figure out. It's not about you. It is a much greater issue. And if you would have been there for your son, if we would have had fathers that are there for their kids and parents, not just fathers, but parents and families that are there supported for their kids would have a place to go and not always have a church that we call a club. Because that it is what it is. Stonewall was our church. Compton's Cafeteria here in San Francisco was our church. I don't remember the name of the club in Chicago where the murders happened as well, was our church. I used to run Club Faith. That was our church, right? And it's not a church of religion, but it's a church where people come and are allowed to be themselves. They come out, if even for a few hours. They come out and they say, I am free. I remember going to my very first gay club, and I think that's another reason why it hit home. Because I was that kid who went to the club in the closet. I had my car broken into the very first night. And to realize that when I went home, I had to lie to my father saying, somebody hid it somewhere else. I couldn't say I was in San Francisco at the gay club.
Right.
I had to lie and say something else.
Right.
Now, for this father to find out his son is gay that moment, it's going to take him a while to realize it. So I feel bad because I saw what my father went through.
Right. We're going to be back in just a moment with the second part of our interview with Cesar, talking about where does the Latino gay community go from here, both in Orlando and here in very enlightened Northern California. We'll be right back. So they're going to run just a little. Hi, this is David Perry, host of 10%. Welcome back. Our continuing conversation about Orlando and its impact specifically on the gay Latino community. Welcome back, our guest, Cesar Zepeda. So you were telling me about your coming out story, and you know, I've been trying to wrap my hands around what this event means to so many people. And I haven't said it actually until this broadcast, but in a way, it feels like, even though on a much smaller scale, our 9/11. You said that your coming out actually coincided with September 11th. Tell me a little bit about that.
So September 11th happened and everything was closed. So September 16 is when I came out. And because I was at home, and my father came in to my room and wanted me to quit my jobs because he related my jobs with being gay for some reason. I was public affairs. I did a public affairs show for KQED through youth radio. And one of the shows that I did was on coming out. And he's like, oh, you know, it's gay, gay, gay. And I was like, you know, I also did a show about witches, and you're not asking me if I'm a witch. You know, and there's other shows that I have done. And he said, well, you know, just there's gay people around, and I don't want you to be gay. I said, well, what about if I was? He said, well, then you would have to leave. I said, okay.
I imagine it wasn't as calmly articulated as you just did it now.
More or less. I was ready. I had my bags packed already. I can feel it. I can feel that this day was going to come. And when I walked out of my room, my whole family was downstairs. They knew something was happening.
So your mother, your brothers, your sister?
My aunts, I don't even know where they all came from. They all were there. They all knew something was happening. And my sister was the only one that knew that I was gay, because I came out to her in June of that year. So she knew that I was no longer going to deny it. I said, if my dad asks me one more time, I will tell him. And I used to be a pack rat, so everything under my bed was just all kinds of stuff, rocks and everything. I threw everything away. My pictures, I have no memories because I was packing, getting ready to go. I had a little bag next to the door, my emergency bag. If I had to run, that's the bag that I was going to take. It had money, phone numbers, and some food. That was my bag to run. And when my dad said that, I was like, I'm already packed.
So when you saw and heard some of the stories out of Orlando, I mean, you know, black and brown kids, you know, did you say, God, that was me, that could have been me?
Yeah, that could have been me. That could have been anybody, right? But if he was attacking the Latino community, being Latino, being gay, being young, and at the age that I would have gone still to those clubs, that could have been me. You know, and how do we protect our community? How do we, not just the community at large, but the LGBT community, we are at so much more danger because anyone, if they see you have a limp wrist, you're wearing a little bit more color, they're going to come after you.
So you still think that exists?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the city of Richmond is existing. In San Francisco, it exists. People tell me that there's homophobia still happening. You know, so it hasn't gone away yet. We've done lots of strides forward.
Right.
But we can't forget our history, but it's still happening.
Right. I mean, you've become a public figure in Richmond. I mean, you're the founder of Richmond Rainbow Pride. You know, social media makes everyone completely visible. But now you're engaged in a campaign. You're running for city council in Richmond, California. Are you scared that someone might take a shot at you?
Yes and no. You know, I look up to Harvey Milk, and I welcome people attacking me for being gay. Right? When I was first talking to people about running, they said they're going to attack you for being gay. I haven't heard anything yet, right? But I'm trying to welcome that conversation and say, let's talk.
Yeah, but you know, there's a difference between a conversation and someone with an AK-47. I mean, so...
Yes, oh, there definitely is. and yes, you know, there is that fear as well. You know, Javanka said, you got to watch out all the time. Everywhere you go, you got to watch around you. Haven't gotten to that mentality yet, but I know that I have to.
Right. I mean, how many guns are there in Richmond? I mean, Richmond sadly has a reputation for having a lot of gun violence. Does it worry you? You know, yeah, we live in this bubble in San Francisco and we think it's fine here, although the only place that anyone's ever called me faggot was in San Francisco in the Castro. You know, so we think we're safe, but we're not. I mean, do you worry about violence in Richmond taking on a decidedly anti-gay bent?
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't let that get to me. You know, there is a worry, but I don't try to let this fear control me. You know, if someone was to murder me for running as the first openly gay man, you know what? The purpose of this is to change the culture, to change the world, to change the conversation, to be there for someone who was younger, who is younger, looking for a way out and saying, I'm like you.
Right. We've only got a few minutes left. Talk to me about where you see us going from here. I mean, sometimes, you know, I remember after September 11th, the first day where the headline wasn't something about 9/11. It took 2 weeks. And we've now been 2 weeks on from the attacks in Orlando, and last night of the day of this taping, Democrats in the United States House of Representatives had a sit-in about gun violence. It was absolutely a direct result of the attacks in Orlando. How much longer do you think this will continue, and do you think Orlando is or will be some sort of tipping point? Where do we go from here?
I hope that it is that tipping point. I hope that it is our Stonewall of the new world now, and that people don't forget that this is history happened. Unfortunately, this sad history has happened, but let's take this anger, this love, this passion, and move our community forward, because it's not just about gay marriage anymore. There's still other rights and there's still other issues happening. This is one of them that hasn't been as apparent. People are getting murdered. LGBT community is getting murdered every single day, just not in mass. So it hasn't been at the forefront of everything. It's not the communication. So now it is. It's, oh, our people are still getting murdered. Yeah, they never stopped getting murdered. It just wasn't in mass. So now the conversation is up again, and we've got our straight allies with us, stronger than ever before. And
talk to me about that.
Yesterday.
We've got a very little time left, but talk to me about the straight allies.
Straight allies, we need them. You always need allies. They are the ones that got us out of the book of mental illness. They are the ones that are going to get us forward. They're going to help us get into places we have not been able to get into. They're the ones that are going to open up these conversations. They're the ones that are going to help us.
What would you like to say in our last minute to specifically the gay Latino community of Orlando? And I'm sure you've been in touch with a lot of them online and through social media.
Stay strong. Stay as a family. Stay together. Remember and don't forget that we are a family, even if we're apart in different parts of the country. We are one big family. I'm having a gentleman from Orlando who almost made it to that night, but he was broke, so he didn't have enough money to go. He's coming to San Francisco to march in the parade. That was his #1 goal, was to march in the San Francisco parade, and unfortunately this happened, but his mother is bringing him over.
Right. Are you marching in San Francisco Pride Parade?
There will be a contingent that will be all about Orlando.
Great. We'll see you there.
Thank you.
Thanks for speaking with us. We've been speaking with Cesar Zepeda, co-founder of Richmond Rainbow Pride. Thank you for watching 10%. I'm David Perry. We'll see you next week.